Think about the last time you told someone a story about your life. Maybe it was about your childhood, or maybe about a relationship that didn't work out, or something difficult that happened to you recently. Most people think it's just a story, but what they don't realize is that every time they repeat that story, they're actually broadcasting a request out into the universe. And the universe simply responds to that request by giving them more experiences that match the vibration of that story. In this video, I want to help you become more aware of the stories that you're telling, both the big life stories and the tiny ones that most people never notice, because those stories are quietly shaping the life you experience. Stories are an essential part of being human. It's how we communicate. It's how knowledge gets passed down. It's how we make sense of our experiences. But not all stories are created equal. Not all stories are helpful to keep repeating. And the reason for that is actually really simple. Every thought you think, every story you repeat is a broadcast. You can think of it as an energetic transmission or a vibrational broadcast that goes out into the universe. And the universe simply matches the vibration of whatever you broadcast. It doesn't judge the story. It doesn't decide whether your story is good or bad. It simply responds by bringing you more experiences that match the vibration of what you're focused on. So if you regularly tell stories that feel uplifting, joyful, empowering, that broadcast attracts more of the same kinds of experiences, those wonderful experiences into your life. But when you repeatedly tell stories about struggle or disappointment or limitation, you are broadcasting those frequencies. And the universe is faithfully matching your broadcast by bringing you more experiences of struggle, disappointment, and limitation. One of the reasons I wanted to make this video is because this comes up constantly in my work when I'm training people in Lemurian healing, or when I'm working with people in my Lemurian mentoring program, and really just in conversations with clients and students in general. Again and again, I notice that people are unknowingly repeating the same old stories about their lives. Sometimes they've been telling the same tales for decades, and those stories keep recreating similar life experiences. And that's why their lives don't seem to change very much. Different details, same stories. So for the purposes of this video, I want to talk about two types of stories that I see all the time. Now, these aren't the only types of stories that we tell, but they are two very common ones. Big life stories and what I call micro stories. Big life stories are the large narratives that we tell others about who we are and why our lives are the way they are. For example, someone might say, I'm this way because of my parents, or I can't trust men anymore because of what happened in my last relationship. Now, I'm sure the experiences that inspired those stories are very real, but repeating those stories over and over again continues broadcasting that limited identity, that limited version of reality out into the universe. And the universe is simply matching the vibration of those stories by manifesting more evidence to support them. This reminds me of a job I had back in the 80s. I took a semester off from college, and I worked in a patent and trademark law firm in Chicago. I worked in the mailroom, and my direct supervisor was a guy who had been there for years. I'm going to say forever, but he had been there for many years. And one thing I noticed about him, even on my first day, was that this guy complained about everything. You probably know someone like that. There was always something wrong about coworkers, about his financial system, the weather, his wife. And after a while, I realized something interesting. His life seemed to be a never-ending series of exactly the kinds of things he was always talking about. More problems, more frustrations, more things to complain about. Now, at that age, I didn't have the spiritual understanding that I have today, but looking back now, it was easy to see a pattern. The stories we repeat shape the reality we experience. Here's another really common example. You probably know someone whose favorite topic of conversation is their health, more specifically, their health problems. They'll tell you about their latest pain, the most recent doctor visit, or some new diagnosis they just received. Of course, it's natural to talk about what's going on in our lives, but when health problems become the main story that someone tells again and again, it only reinforces that negative energetic focus. And the universe obliges by creating new and more difficult health issues for that person. The second category of stories I want to talk about is something I call micro stories. You might call them beliefs. But a belief is simply a thought that you've repeated so many times in your head that it becomes an expectation. Another way to say it is that a belief is simply a story that you keep telling yourself. These are the little stories that run quietly in the background of our lives. Things like, this is hard, I'm not ready, my boss hates me, I can't do this, or making money is stressful, I should be better. We repeat those thoughts, those micro stories so often, they feel like facts, but in truth, they're just tiny stories that we've practiced over and over again. I actually caught myself doing this recently. My wife and I enjoy learning ballroom dancing together, and she's always excited to learn new routines because she picks them up very quickly. And so sometimes she'll show me a new routine on YouTube and say, hey, let's learn this one. And my first reaction has often been something like, whoa, that looks difficult. And I hesitate to commit because I'm doubting my abilities. But here's the truth. I've already learned plenty of dance routines and steps over the last few years. I have ample evidence that I can learn new dance steps and I can memorize new routines. So when I caught myself doing that again, I realized I was repeating an old micro story that says, hey, this is hard and I'm not sure I can do it. But that story isn't actually the truth. It's just a thought that I've repeated in my head or said out loud enough times that it felt true to me. I remember my mom used to do something similar. She was a first grade teacher in her 60s, and all the teachers at her school were expected to use computers and technology in their classrooms. But my mom had this story she would repeat all the time. I'm no good with technology. I'm terrible with computers. So no matter how many years she taught, that was the story she kept telling herself and everyone else. And because she kept repeating it, that experience kept reinforcing itself and repeating itself. So let me ask you this. What is one small story that you tell yourself all the time that's probably limiting you? Maybe it's, I never have enough money. I'm not good at this. I have too many things to do and not enough time. These are micro stories. And just like the bigger life stories, all of them get broadcast out into the universe. And the universe simply responds by matching that vibration and bringing you more of the same. Now, if more of the same is what you really, really want, that's excellent. But if it isn't, are you beginning to see the awesome potential you have to change your reality, to change your life? So what's the answer? Well, the first step is simply sharpening your awareness. Start noticing the stories you tell, both the big ones and the tiny ones. And when you catch yourself repeating an old story that really doesn't serve you, don't judge yourself. Don't beat yourself up. Just be glad that you noticed it. You might even say to yourself, oh, there's that story again. And then you choose not to continue telling it. And by the way, the only way to release an unwanted habit is to simply stop repeating it. You don't fight with it, just stop feeding it. The second step is to start telling new stories. Stories about what's working in your life, what's going well. Stories about who and what you appreciate. Stories about the person that you're becoming. And stories about the better life that you are consciously creating for yourself. Those new stories will create new broadcasts, and the universe will start to match the vibration of those new, positive, expansive thoughts. So here's your takeaway in a nutshell. Become more aware of the stories you tell yourself and others automatically. Stop telling the old stories that don't serve you, and start telling new ones that do. And the great news is that you can start doing this immediately. There is no prep and nothing to figure out. You just do it. Listen, if you're feeling brave, leave me a note in the comments. Give me one story that you're going to stop telling immediately and one story you're going to start telling. I'd love to hear from you. The stories you repeat today are quietly shaping the life that you're creating for yourself tomorrow and next week and next month. So start paying attention to them. Notice the ones that no longer serve you and gently let them go. And begin telling new stories about what's working, about who you're becoming, and about the life that you are ready to step into. Because the universe is always listening, and it's always responding to the stories you choose to tell. Thank you so much for watching. Aloha.